Bombay. April 1992. The corridors of the Bombay Stock Exchange felt colder that morning. Not because of the early summer breeze, but because something darker, heavier, had drifted into the building: fear. Rumors moved like wildfire. Sucheta Dalal has published something. About Harshad, about the BRs. Is this the end? Every trader, every broker, every banker could sense it. The big bull was bleeding. A man once celebrated like a rock star was now at the heart of the biggest financial scandal India had ever known. But this was not how his story began. Not even close. Long before the Lexus, before the headlines, before the skyscraper high confidence, there was a boy named Harshad, born in a modest chawl in Bombay. His family had migrated from Gujarat, carrying dreams bigger than their belongings. His father worked hard, shifting from one small business to another. The income was uncertain, but the values were solid: discipline, effort, honesty. Harshad wasn't a prodigy. He wasn't top of his class. He wasn't the boy teachers whispered about with pride. But he was observant, endlessly curious, and unusually bold. He believed he was meant for something bigger. Something louder. When other boys bragged about cricket scores or movie stars, Harshad bragged about numbers, about how companies made money, about how prices went up and down, about the mysterious world of stocks. He didn't fully understand it yet, but he knew one thing. The stock market was a place where a nobody could become a king. In the late 1970s, Harshad landed a junior job at a brokerage firm. His role was trivial: running around, shouting orders, maintaining books. No one noticed him. But Harshad noticed everything. He watched how traders moved, how big deals were made, how panic spread, how rumors created tsunamis. He watched how a single line from a powerful man could move a stock price by 10% in minutes. He realized the market was not a temple of logic, it was a theater of emotions. And Harshad? He was born a showman. Slowly, he started trading with small amounts. And he had something most traders didn't: fearlessness. He played bold, bet big, took risks others avoided. Sometimes he won. Sometimes he lost. But every day, he learned. By the early 1980s, Harshad had impressed enough people to start his own firm. Crore Research and Asset Management. This was his first step from the backstage to the spotlight. The 1980s stock market was like wild jungle. Barely regulated. Poorly supervised. Full of loopholes. Harshad Mehta thrived in that chaos. He became a master of identifying undervalued stocks, companies ignored by everyone else. He called them sleeping lions. And once he believed in a stock, he bought aggressively, fearlessly, relentlessly. Then the magic began. He would convince other investors that the company was worth far more than its price suggested. Word would spread. Traders would rush in. The price would climb faster, higher, stronger. And Harshad rode that wave like a king. Stocks like ACC, Sterlite, Videocon, companies that had been quiet or stagnant, suddenly roared to life under Harshad's influence. People started calling him the Big Bull. He didn't just invest. He transformed the market. Newspapers wrote front-page stories about him. Business shows dedicated segments to his strategies. Middle-class families followed his moves religiously, investing their savings based on his choices. Harshad Mehta had become more than a trader. He had become a phenomenon. For the first time in his life, Harshad had money. Real money. Mountains of money. And he didn't hide it. He moved into a penthouse in Worli, massive, modern, and packed with luxuries that India had rarely seen. He began throwing lavish parties. He bought the first Lexus LS 400 ever imported to India, at a time when even a Maruti 800 was considered premium. People were stunned. Here was a man who had risen from nothing, who had no godfather, who had no political support, yet he had built a kingdom with his brilliance. To the country, he became a symbol of ambition and possibility. To the press, he was a gold mine of headlines. To politicians and businessmen, he was someone to stay on the good side of. And Harshad loved every bit of it. But behind the wealth, behind the confidence, behind the swagger, something else was growing. Something dangerous. India's banking system in the early 1990s was like a fortress made of sand, strong on the outside, fragile inside. The Ready Forward (RF) deal was a type of short-term loan between banks. Brokers acted as middlemen. Banks issued bank receipts, BRs, as proof of transactions. These receipts were meant to be temporary acknowledgments. A stopgap. A harmless tool. But they were also a loophole. A loophole waiting to be exploited. Some banks began issuing BRs without holding the actual securities. They trusted the system blindly. Harshad saw the flaw. He saw the potential. He saw a golden river where others saw nothing. Using these BRs, he sourced huge sums of money from banks, hundreds of crores, without giving them real securities in return. With that money, he re-entered the market like a storm, buying massive quantities of shares and pushing prices to unimaginable levels. Shares soared. The Sensex exploded. Investors made fortunes. People worshipped him. But the truth was buried deep under paperwork and trust. And it was about to surface. April 23, 1992. Sucheta Dalal, a sharp, fearless journalist from the Times of India, received a tip-off. How can a stockbroker afford a Lexus? How is his firm growing at rocket speed? Where is all this money coming from? These were the questions no one dared to ask publicly. But Sucheta Dalal did. She investigated quietly, meticulously, relentlessly. Through interviews, leaked documents, and sources inside banks, she discovered something shocking. The entire bubble built by Harshad Mehta rested on borrowed money, illegal borrowed money. Fake BRs. Messy RF deals. Bank funds redirected to the stock market. She had the proof. She had the story. And she published it. The headline was polite. But the impact? Explosive. The exposé hit the market like a nuclear blast. Banks panicked. They demanded their money back. There were no securities to offer. The truth was now undeniable. Harshad's empire, built on boldness and loopholes, began to crack. Share prices crashed. The Sensex plummeted. Investors lost their life savings. Rival brokers celebrated. Politicians distanced themselves. The media turned from praise to fire. And the big bull? He was now a hunted man. Court summons. Regulatory investigations. Police interrogations. Public outrage. The man who once walked through the Bombay Stock Exchange like a king now entered courtrooms like a prisoner. Harshad was arrested. And with him, the illusion came crashing down. The scam shook India like nothing before. 4,000 Indian rupees crore were unaccounted for. Multiple banks were exposed. Politicians were implicated. SEBI tightened its grip. RBI overhauled entire systems. Public trust in the stock market was shattered. The media hounded Harshad. Every channel, every paper painted him as a villain. But inside the man himself, a strange calm had settled. He insisted he was not a criminal. He insisted he merely used flaws already present. He argued that India's financial system was archaic and he was its inevitable consequence. He fought endless court cases. He made accusations. He blamed the government. He blamed banks. But the tide had already turned against him. By the late 1990s, Harshad Mehta's health and wealth were both deteriorating. His firm had collapsed. His cars were gone. His penthouse was sealed. His accounts were frozen. The king had been reduced to a man fighting for survival. But even then, his confidence never fully disappeared. He continued planning comebacks. He continued researching stocks. He still believed he would rise again. On December 31, 2001, inside Thane jail, Harshad complained of chest pain. As the night deepened, the pain worsened. And just like that, the big bull's heart stopped. He was 47. A titan had fallen in silence. Even today, decades later, India remembers Harshad Mehta with a mixture of awe, anger, respect, and caution. He was a genius, a rule breaker, a visionary, a manipulator, a product of a flawed system, a man who flew too close to the sun. His story remains one of the most dramatic chapters in India's financial history, a story of ambition overshadowed by greed, brilliance overshadowed by risk, and a rise overshadowed by an inevitable fall. He didn't just break the system. He forced the system to rebuild itself. The big bull may have fallen, but his legacy still walks the corridors of Dalal Street like a ghost, reminding every trader, every banker, every dreamer. Greatness built on loopholes never lasts. But stories built on great ambition never die.
For more inspiring stories like this, please like the video and subscribe the Rich Trackers channel.